All right, we're about to dive into one of the most famous and honestly one of the weirdest cases in all of legal history. It's a story about a business deal that should have been simple, but it completely fell apart because of one single, impossibly confusing word.
So really, how can the exact same words mean two totally different things? It sounds like a riddle, right? But for two businessmen back in the 19th century, it was a very real and very expensive problem. And it all started with a simple shipment of cotton.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1864. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing. The mills in Liverpool are just constantly hungry for cotton, especially from ports like Bombay. A deal like this, shipping goods across the world, should have been totally routine. Just another Tuesday.
So let's break down the basics. You've got your seller, a guy named Raffles, and your buyer, a Mr. Wichelhaus. They agree on a deal for a bunch of cotton. And here's the crucial part. The contract says the cotton is to arrive ex-Peerless from Bombay. In other words, it's coming on a ship named the Peerless. Now, you got to remember that name. It's the key to this entire mess.
So, time passes, and eventually a ship named Peerless does show up in Liverpool with a hold full of cotton. The seller, Raffles, is ready to finish the transaction, get paid. But the buyer, Wichelhaus, just flat out refuses to take it. He won't accept it, won't pay for it, the deal's off. And from where the seller is standing, this makes absolutely no sense.
And that is the big question here. I mean, why would you go to all the trouble of making a contract just to say, no thanks, at the finish line? Did the price suddenly change? Was the cotton no good? The seller, Raffles, was completely baffled, so he sued for breach of contract. And that's when the court had to step in and figure out what on earth went wrong. And the whole case, all the arguments, all the confusion, everything, it all boiled down to these 6 little words right here. Nothing else mattered. The answer wasn't about the price of cotton or some defect in the product. Nope, it all came down to the ship, the Peerless. And you might be thinking, what could possibly be so complicated about a name? Well, as the court was about to find out, an almost unbelievable coincidence was sitting right at the heart of this whole thing. And here's the twist. It turns out there wasn't just one ship named Peerless sailing from Bombay to Liverpool. There were 2. Unbelievable, right? The buyer, Wichelhaus, was expecting his cotton on the Peerless that left port in October. But the seller, Raffles, had put his cotton on a totally different ship, also named Peerless, that left 2 months later in December.
So you see the problem. When the buyer said Peerless, he meant the October ship. When the seller said Peerless, he meant the December ship. They used the exact same word, but they were thinking of 2 completely different things. This created a massive legal question. If they weren't on the same page, did they ever really have a deal in the first place? And this gets us to a huge, foundational idea in contract law. It has a fancy Latin name, consensus ad idem. All that really means is a meeting of the minds. For a contract to be real and binding, both people have to agree to the exact same thing in the exact same sense. You've got to be on the same wavelength.
And in the case of the 2 ships, the court's decision was actually pretty straightforward. There was no meeting of the minds. Simple as that. Both the buyer and the seller had made an honest, mutual mistake about a huge part of the deal, which ship was carrying the cotton. And because of that, no valid contract had ever really existed. Wichelhaus, the buyer, was free to go.
So this little case from 1864, Raffles versus Wichelhaus, ended up having this massive legacy. It's just a perfect textbook example of how hidden confusion can completely destroy a contract. It really cemented the idea that a mutual mistake about something essential means there's no deal at all. It's a powerful lesson in why being crystal clear is everything, and it's why this story is still taught in law schools all over the world.
And that kind of brings us to a final thought. You know, we make tons of little agreements every single day, with friends, with family, with coworkers, and we just assume we're all on the same page. But are we really? The case of the 2 ships is this wild reminder that what seems perfectly clear to you could mean something totally different to someone else. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many of our own agreements are just one Peerless away from falling apart?